Okay, guys, we're back. We're back in part 3, meal 2, 1A, and let's go. Even though you're eating,
I'm always eating something.
Okay. So why are we going to go look at this scripture?
Because we're referring to Isaiah 19:19 in the Hebrew scriptures, for obvious reasons, because the Torah and the Tanakh are written in Hebrew, not English. Newsflash, people. The Bible you read is translated into English, and it's almost an erroneous copy if you really study it intently. And you go back and you miss things like Azazel, Asherah poles, which are groves. I'll show you that later. All sorts of stuff, man. There's so much stuff in there, it's unbelievable. And then here. So here it says in verse 19, "And that day there shall be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt." So whenever I'm reading the, oh shucks, what did I just do? Oh shucks, what did I just do? Oh no, I've lost it. Oh no, don't pause it.
Yep.
Okay. So, verse 19. Ah man, that is pain in my backside. "And that day shall there be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and the pillar at the border thereof to the Lord." So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here, and it says, that was trippy. Yeah, let's just keep it there. It says, "And in the day he shall be altar to Yahweh in midst of land of Egypt, and monument beside boundary of her to Yahweh." So this is just reconfirming what the scriptures actually say in the Hebrew and making sure that it corresponds. I came here looking for possibly the word pyramid. I know that in other translations that the word altar actually says pyramid, but you can do your own research on it. So let's go back to the study, please. So we've already been through this verse in Revelation 21 from 1 to 5. So in the above Holy Scripture, we see that the new heaven is brought to earth so that the Father, aka Yahuwah, can dwell with his people as it was originally intended at Genesis, aka Parashah. Sorry, I said aka instead of aka. It's because I pronounce my vowels R, E, E, O, U naturally. So let's scroll up, please. So revelation is revolution. Revelation, no, we don't need to. So verse 9, 21 verse 9. One of the 7 angels. Who are the 7 angels? That's going to be in another study. But I can tell you right now that these are the 7 archangels. And we'll study that. We'll study who they are in another one, but these are the 7 archangels. Who had the 7 bowls of the 7 last plagues came and said to me, "Come." So the 7 last plagues. So the way the kingdom of heaven works is everything on earth mirrors everything on earth that the Israelites did, mirrors what exists in the Shamayim in heaven, because it's talking about the 7 last plagues. you can go back and see how many plagues there were when the Israelites left, when Pharaoh let the Israelites go after the last plague, when the angel of death swept through Egypt and killed all the firstborn, aka Passover, Pesach. So we know that that day happened on Nisan 14. How do we know that? Because we've been studying Pesach, what day it happens on, and what marks Nisan 14, which is a full moon. And oddly enough, the first Passover recorded in the Bible is the Passover in Egypt, which is directly connected to what? The Great Pyramid of Giza. So there's just way too many connections there for it to be a coincidence. And the angel said, "Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." And that's exactly what I was talking about before, where in the law, Yahuwah gave to Moses, it specifically and explicitly says that a man or a husband cannot divorce his wife and then marry her again, and only unless he dies. Then people will logically say, well, how can he marry her if he's dead? Well, Yeshua HaMashiach became the husband of that wife, because it says there, "Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." And who is the Lamb? Well, it's obviously Yeshua. How do we know that? Because at Passover in Egypt, as recorded by Moses with the Pharaoh, they slaughtered a lamb specifically, or a goat if they couldn't afford a lamb, and then spread the lambs. It has to be a spotless lamb, because it was foreshadowing Yeshua HaMashiach who was to come. Then they painted that blood with hyssop branches. You know, there's something in that as well. I don't know what it is because I haven't done a study yet. But they painted their doorways with this lamb's blood, and then when the angel of death came through, he passed over. That's the reason why it's called Passover, aka Pesach. So this is all connected. And he carried me away in the spirit to a mountain great and high, and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. And verse 1, from verse 1 onwards, don't move, please. It talks about how, I said don't move. Come down. So if we go back and read verse 1, it tells us that the new Jerusalem is coming down out of the heavens and is going to be set up on the new earth, and so that Yahuwah can come down and dwell with his people as he originally intended at the garden. But because those two idiots, Adam and Eve, couldn't help themselves, then they sinned, and that's a DNA issue there, and that's another study. And therefore our DNA became corrupt, and because it was no longer perfect, we die. But there's also another secret in 2 Corinthians that tells us, 2 Corinthians 15, 51 tells us that not all will die. Not everybody will fall asleep in death, but that's another study. So these are just all the jewels that Yahuwah blesses me with. This is the gift that he's given me, to see all these things in Scripture. Anyway, and its brilliance was like that of very precious jewels. So this is telling you what the Great Pyramid of Giza must have looked like at one time, because that scripture in Isaiah 19:19 is clearly talking about this holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven. People will go, well, how do you know that? Because you guys can look what it looks like here. We're going to go down to the next one, to verse 15, and read, where it gives us the actual measurements, and therefore you can surmise the shape. And the angel who talked with me had a measuring rod of gold to measure the city, its gates and its walls. The city was laid out like a square. Pyramids have what? A square foundation, as long as it was wide. He measured the city with the rod and found it to be 12,000 stadia in length. I think if on it, and as wide and as high as it is long. The angel measured the wall using human measurement. So this is talking about the wall that encases the city, which has no direct correlation to the actual city, which comes down out of heaven from God. So let's just go down and just extrapolate this. So in the critical information regarding measurements of the holy city, keep going up till it's all in sight. Highlighted in red, from verse 15 to 17, it describes a gargantuan object coming out of heaven from Yahuwah to the new earth. Interestingly enough, it gives a square base via the words the city was laid out like a square. Incidentally, the Great Pyramid of Giza has a square base. The description goes on to tell us that its length is 12,000 stadia. So if you click on that, okay. So the term stadia comes from the plural of the Greek stadion. The word for a distance of 185 to 192 meters, which is 607 to 630 feet. A very similar length is the modern furlong, or an eighth of a mile, which is 660 feet. So a stadia is between 607 and 630 feet. Now let's go back to the study, please. And its width and height are the same as its length. And then it goes on to say that the walls are 130 cubits thick. So in ancient times, cities were demarcated by walls. So that wall is talking about the wall that's going to demarcate this New Jerusalem, this city. So let's go down, please. So the most critical information or component to pay attention to in the description of the holy city highlighted above in red is that it tells you that there is no roof. It gives us a square base, length, width, and height, but no roof dimensions, which indicates that its shape is that of a pyramid, because the height, the length, and the width, they all go up to one point. It doesn't mention anything about a roof. Doesn't mention a gabled roof, doesn't mention a square roof, doesn't mention anything. It just gives you the base, which is square, the height, the width, and the length, but no roof. So that tells you that this shape, if you think outside the square and outside what modern archaeology tells you, and just read it for what it actually is, it's actually telling you, and you can do your own research on this, because I did hours worth today. This is telling you and consolidating and corroborating what's prophesied at Isaiah 19:19, which therefore tells us that the Great Pyramid of Giza, most probably pre-flood, was once upon a time probably the holy city of Jerusalem, or the center of true worship. And the people who presided over that are all of Abel's line and not Cain's line. So it's common knowledge today amongst people such as myself and the likes of Rob Skiba, Ali Marzulli, Timothy Alberino, and thousands of other people who are waking up all over the world, that the Great Pyramid of Giza was probably built by Enoch and the angels. And we'll do a study on Enoch and meal 3, so level 3, the meat. Now, So let's go to a scripture reference from meal 1.1a. So this is just showing you where you can go to. But so if we click on this, it'll take you to meal 1a, and I don't even know if it's in this particular part for that meal, but it's in one of them. So you're just gonna have to watch them so you can see which one it is. And it's not because I couldn't be bothered finding the exact one, I just didn't have time. But I thought if I put this in our study, then you guys and girls could watch it. So let's just close that, please. Please, sis. Okay, now, so the scripture reference from meal 1.1a, which was in reference to Molech from Leviticus 18:21. So let's just click on that just to show people that we're actually extracting these scriptures that are in our study from these scriptures. Okay. So if we go down to verse 18:22, I think it is. No, yeah, 21. So it says there, do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to Molech. So what you're going to start seeing in scripture once you know about Pesach, about the Moedims, especially Pesach, Passover, then you'll start seeing unleavened bread and all throughout scripture, especially in the Old Testament and the Torah and the Tanakh. You'll start seeing references of unleavened bread. And the reason why we're referencing this scripture is because this scripture is telling us about children being sacrificed to Molech. As it reads there, do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to Molech, for you must not profane the name of your God. God, I am the Lord. So if you read any of the other incipient words and the rest of these scriptures surrounding that one, you'll see that this is about sexual defilement. But it doesn't say that in that verse. But what that tells you is that there's something sexual going on, sexually happening to these kids, to these children. And this is where, as we continue to study this and go through it, because people go, oh, what's this got to do with Pesach? That'll become eminently clear to you as we keep going. So let's keep going. Please go to the study. Okay, so the scripture says, do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to Molech, for you must not profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. 2 Kings 23:10 references Molech again in more detail, which reads 2 Kings 23:10, and he defiled Topeh, which is in the valley of the children of Hinnom, that no man might make his son or his daughter pass through the fire to Molech. So what do you think would happen to a child who's passed through fire? They'd either get severely burnt or they'd die. Probably die, because this is child sacrifice. After they've been molested. How do we know that? Because in the previous reference, Leviticus 18:21, it tells us in there, do not sacrifice your children to Molech. But it's mentioned amongst all the other verses which refer to sexual defilement. And so that tells me that in Leviticus 18:21, these children are not only being sacrificed to Molech, they're being sexually assaulted, sexually molested, aka pedophilia, which is what's going on in our world and has been going on since way back then, which is how the elite, the Luciferian elite at that, this is how they get their power, because they sacrifice these children. They rape them first, then they sacrifice them to their to their demonic warlord. And I had another epiphany about this. Yeah. But that's going to be another study. So it says here, critically, we can see from the previous two referenced scriptures, there's sexual molestation, aka pedophilia, going on, and ultimately child sacrifice by passing them through the fire. Furthermore, as we read 2 Kings 23:4, so let's go and read that. Four. And the king commanded Hilkiah, which king? King Josiah. How do I know? I just know. You guys can do your own research on it. I just know it's King Josiah. If you go to the Hebrew to English and to learn their scriptures, it'll tell you. And the king commanded Hilkiah, it's actually pronounced Hilkiah because it's R-E-E, the high priests and the priests of the second order. So if you know the law and you know who Yeshua HaMashiach is, the high priest, there is a second order of priests. Because if you remember, the Levites were the priests, and everything goes back to Leviticus, the Mosaic laws, and Deuteronomy. Well, a sprinkling all throughout the Torah, but mostly in Leviticus. And the keepers of the door. So if we go back to the study, you'll see the highlights. So, and the king Josiah commanded Hilkiah, the high priest, and the priests. So anything that's of Yahuwah, I've highlighted it in red because it's important. And the keepers of the door, notice it's a lighter shade of red, which means that it's not so important. But the priest, the high priest, and the second order of priests are absolutely imperative. Then in blue, it's got action words, adjectives. Bring forth out of the temple of the Lord all the vessels that were made for Baal. So you'll notice that I put Baal in brown because brown looks like what? Mud. And mud looks like what? S-H-I-T. And for the grove. So these are obviously things that I know based on study that are Luciferian. So I've coloured them the same colour as shit. And for all the host of heaven, so I've obviously coloured them what I thought was a sky blue because of the heaven. And he burned them without Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron, and carried the ashes of them unto Bethel. It is important to note that Baal is the demonic warlord of the Canaanite region who lords over soil fertility. Now, if you click on that, make it click. Yep. As such, Baal designated the universal god of fertility, and in that capacity, his title was Prince, Lord of the Earth. He was also called the Lord of Rain and Dew, the two forms of moisture that were indispensable for fertile soil. And where? Canaan. Because where are they when Moses is given these laws? Entering into the land of Canaan.
All right.
Okay, so
that's 15 minutes.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna have a break and then we'll get back to you.